Welcome back. If you remember correctly, last time we were finishing those welts up, so I just wanted to do a quick recap on that, and then we're going to get started on gluing. This is where we start the actual assembly process. We start by folding the sheath in half. You can also use a scraper to scrape the inside line where you're folding, but this leather is not too thick, so we've found that it's kind of an unnecessary step. We can just use the palms of our hands to apply enough pressure to fold that line down. We start gluing by putting a couple of big gloops of glue down on the handle and where the handle is going to rest. I usually do anywhere from 3 to 5 to get started. We want that glue to be nice and tacky when it's dry. Kind of helps things stick a little bit better, and that way no glue leaks out and gets weird on the edges. Now I'm going back through and I'm going to thin that glue out and kind of spread it more so that it can get real tacky before I clip it down. Use binder clips to help that process because it just holds everything in place. I know many leathersmiths use barge rubber cement. We stopped because we have to do a lot of this indoors, and honestly, tacky glue is, in my opinion, just as good, if not better. It dries clear, whereas rubber cement dries like a yellow, and there's no VOC fumes or anything like that coming off of this glue. It's basically like Elmer's glue, if I'm going to be honest, and we just use the clips to kind of hold things in place while things are drying, but it's really worth the extra effort to not have to use a toxic glue. I'm getting my binder clips out and I'm going to fold that handle over just like that. I rub it a little bit so that that glue has a second to stick, and then I clip that binder clip on both sides so that they both get an even distribution there to hold them together longer. We do sew these sheaths also, so I mean, if the glue peels up a little bit, it's not that big of a deal, but we like to make a nice product, so I just clip them just to be on the safe side. Now that the handles have all been glued down, we're going to put the welts on. I start by lining both edges of the sheath in glue. Again, I do anywhere from 3 to 5 on average. Not really applying a whole lot there. Again, I'll be spreading that out. Now that we have our glue down, we're going to apply the welt. And then I just go through and put the welt on each one. That's what it looks like. That was a really bad angle. Sorry, everybody. Now I'm going to put glue on top of the welt. And after we've spread that out in a nice thin line, we will close the sheath and put the binder clips on. You can see here I use quite a bit less glue than any other point in this process, because at this point the majority of the glue has already been applied and we just want this thin layer to get kind of tacky in the next couple of minutes so that we can clip everything together. Now it's time to close the sheath, so I grab a few binder clips and I just fold it over. I start at the top corner and I put a clip there, then I work a little bit down and put another clip, and then a third and a fourth at the very tip. This ensures that there's a good weight distribution, everything's getting closed really well, and usually we let those sit for 20 minutes or more, really. At least 20 minutes though. Now that everything's glued together, we're going to sew the sheath. We start out by sewing from the tip of the sheath all the way down to the bottom there, and we're going to back stitch it. So I throw it in the reverse, back stitch it 2 stitches, and then I stop it there, trim the thread on both sides. I just hold it between my knees. It makes it easier. Now I'm going to burn the ends of that so that they don't come undone, and that's pretty much it. That's sewing it anyhow. In many cases that would really just be the end of the entire sheath making process, but we like to add a nicer finishing touch. So once the sheaths are all sewn, they get sanded and then burnished with Resin on the edge. It gives it a nicer finished look. And because these sheaths are included with a blacksmithing experience, we like to make sure that the customer is getting a really nice quality sheath to go with their handmade knife. Now that we're done sewing, here's the sanding process. You start by sanding the edges. So you start there at the tip and you work your way back, and then you kind of just go back and forth a few times. And you're just trying to trim any rough edges off of that edge. Sort of like, I think it's 120 grit sandpaper that we use there. And that roughens the edge of the leather up so that when it's burnished, it becomes nice and smooth again. As you can imagine, this creates quite a bit of dust that we definitely don't want to breathe. So while we're sanding, we're wearing a full face mask with a respirator attached that has filters in it that are P100 for superfine particulates. We've got this, you can kind of see it's a visqueen room there, that keeps all the dust in place, and hooked up to that machine that you can't really see is a dust collector that is sucking directly from this sanding area and going into a collection bin that's filtered. And we also have an air purifier in the shop just to make sure that we're safe while we're doing all of this stuff. And now the edge is nice and clean, super sanded and soft. Now we're going to burnish the edge with a little bit of Resolene and a cotton rag. And essentially we're using friction to smooth out the edge of that sheath. And it works really well. And it leaves it a slightly darker color and just gives it a really nice finished look. And it's smooth to the touch. Thanks for watching today. I appreciate you spending your time with me and watching this video. Please like and subscribe for more content.